If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Because as your life changes and your body changes, Sleep Number mattresses adapt and shift to give you personalized comfort night after night. And now everything's on sale during our Memorial Day event. Save up to $1,200 on mattresses for a limited time. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
Just doing it big, you know.
Your home for the best sports radio for your afternoon drive is right here. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. A lot of hockey there in the first hour. Here's that tweet. Maybe we can bring it up later on the show. But Jaylen Brown said, clickbait is like flopping for the media, exaggerating contact. Y'all be safe out there. Kind of funny. The crying continues. Yeah. Anyway, we had the end-of-year press conference for the Utah Mammoth that took up all of the 2 o'clock hour. You heard from the Bear, Andre Tierney. Still figuring out Tierney, but Scotty and like Hatch, and they're going Tierney. I'm feeling Tierney.
That's who you trust?
Not Jake Hatch, Ryan Hatch, who dealt with the Bear in Phoenix.
And you trust Scotty?
Scotty G?
Uh-huh.
My guy, Scotty G? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I do.
Did you try any of those Beehive Mills yet, or?
I did. They were delicious.
Oh, okay.
We had a chicken soup. We went away from the flat top and went with the crock pot.
There was a joke sprinkled in there, by the way.
There was. I heard it. But yeah, it was quite good. So anyway, Tierney, and then Bill and Chris Armstrong, no relation. They're in our second segment. So if we aired most of it, I would say like 90% of it. But if
99%, they both wrapped like right as we went to break anyways.
But if you missed anything or whatever, we're going to get it all posted at KSLSports.com. Ben, we'll get to the top 3 stories of the day. KSLSports.com coming up at 3:30. We'll dive into some NBA playoffs at that point. Also, a college basketball series was announced, so we'll talk about that as well. But here in the 3 o'clock hour, or top 3 o'clock hour, you want to crunch through a Jazz convo?
Love to.
All right.
It's a big week for the Jazz. Not that we're starting with the lottery by any means. We're not talking about the lottery. But the lottery is Sunday. Like, the Jazz are going to be back in the news for the next week.
Yeah, they're going to fall a couple spots again.
We'll see. Number 7.
That's what I'm betting. That's 7's my number. I called it weeks ago.
I think that's totally fair. It's the most likely outcome.
That's my call. 7. Not going to get any favors. And they're not going to drop them all the way to 8. Because that would require so many teams to jump in front of them.
Yeah.
That would really be egregious.
Pretty brutal.
Mm-hmm.
I ran through a simulation on Twitter. I posted it. The Mavericks won, and the Jazz dropped to like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
That would not go around.
Happy for Dallas.
Very well.
It's going to happen. Brace yourself.
Yeah.
A.J. DiBonsa and Cooper Flagg on the same roster.
But the good news, Cam Boozer ends up with the Oklahoma City Thunder. So
even better.
Who knows? Anyway, sorry.
No, I was listening to DJ and PK this morning, as I'm off to do. And they had Brian Getzeiler on, who's one of my favorite NBA guests that they have on, and they've had a relationship with him for a long time. Always must-listen radio, in my opinion, when he jumps on. He does a radio show on the NBA channel on SiriusXM. He was not the one Frank Isola was complaining about the other day. But he does do a show. I'm trying to remember who his co-host is. I don't listen to a whole lot of satellite radio. But he came on with them this morning, and DJ asked a question about Keyonte George and someone else on the Jazz, but I don't think it was Lowry. But he asked about Keyonte specifically and players who put up big numbers on bad teams and what you can kind of gauge from that in specific to Keyonte George. And here's a couple of minutes that Brian did, and I thought it was really curious, and I'm curious to hear from your response as well, Ben. So let's go ahead and play that.
How much stock do you put in guys who put up decent or very good numbers on teams that don't win and are basically losing teams? And where I'm going with this specifically is Markkanen and Keyonte George.
I think you have to look at every player individually when you're looking at that thesis, so to speak. And I say it in this way. I have no doubt in my mind that Larry Markkanen can and will be at some point a very productive player on a winning team. All of those abilities are right in there for him. And I think he can do that, and I think he can do that relatively easily. I really do. I worry a little bit about George because of the ball dominance, frankly. I really do. I think that the ball dominance of Keyonte George makes it that if you do have other players around you, are you going to be willing to give it up? Or in late game situations, are you going to be willing to pass the ball to find the guy for the right play? I mean, listen, I go back to Game 6 of the Toronto Raptors series against the Cavs. Scotty Barnes made a decision late in that game when they needed a shot. And Scotty Barnes is clearly the best player on that team, but he passed the ball to R.J. Barrett for an open shot. Could you see Keyonte George doing something like that in a big spot? At this stage of his career, probably not. So when you go to those two players, it completely depends upon the individual player. Do you play well with others? That is the big answer, because if you do play well with others, even if you're on a bad team and you can put up numbers, if you're a guy that plays well with others, you can be a solution and a major piece on a winning team. I do think Markkanen plays well with others. I worry a little bit about Keyonte George. And I'll say this, he's a young player, and I think he's got a lot of potential. But I think in some ways, depending upon how this team shakes out next year, there's going to be moments where Collier's the better fit with the ball in his hands because of how much more willingly he moves the ball and sets guys up, because between Markkanen and Jaren Jackson and Ace Bailey, there's other shot makers on this team outside of Keyonte George. He's going to have to, his big challenge going into next year is, how do I use those pieces around me for the greater good of the overall team? And I think that's something that Will Hardy's going to have to work with him on, but I do think in what we've seen so far, that may be a little bit of a challenge.
Sorry, it was Patrick who asked the question, so fake news there on my part. I did hear it. What do you think?
I do not have those concerns about Keyonte specifically. Now, some of that we just need to get to the playoffs and see what this team actually looks like when Keyonte George has to make those decisions. But I'm not really particularly worried about Keontae's desire to call his own number in those situations. I think he really is not so much of a me-first guy. I mean, I would understand if maybe in the first year you would have thought that, or maybe the second year you would have thought that. I did not see that much, if at all. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't hit some huge clutch shots last year. He definitely did. He hit clutch shots against Dallas, if I remember correctly. He hit clutch shots against Chicago, obviously. But I think he was certainly willing to get off the ball. I'm really not worried about that. In fact, I might flip it where I'm probably more worried about Lowry's ability to make the right read late in the game more so than I am Keyonte.
You kind of dialed in on the late in the game thing. Which is important, was part of what he was saying, but I'm more the danger of him being too ball dominant. That, not that this season was fool's gold, and I'm not necessarily anticipating him going into next year with this attitude, but if he goes in like, hey, I'm going to score 28 a game, I don't think that's where he fits. If he is going to be a ball dominant guard, I don't think that's what Will Hardy's looking for. Not just in late game situations, but in overall game situations. Like Brian said, does he play well with others? And I think that obviously a big part of his take was in the crucial plays in the playoffs, but I was listening to it more in general. Will he play well with others? Because when Keyonte, what percentage of the season that Keyonte played was he the top guy for the Jazz? I mean, with Lowry, he probably isn't the top guy, but other than that, who did he have to pass to? No one.
No, the last 25 games of the season, I don't think he was the top
So
guy.
how does he get Markkanen involved? How does he get Jackson involved? If Walker Kessler does look like he's taking the next step offensively, how does he get him involved? Ace Bailey's going to have to eat, right? Mm-hmm. So what does he turn into a guy a lot like what we saw last night with Mike Conley, and we'll get to the Timberwolves, or Mike Conley maybe think about in his heyday, a player like that. Who can score, but also get Zach Randolph going, or get Marc Gasol going, or nobody would ever accuse Mike of being a selfish player at any point during his career, even though at some points during his career he was a guy who scored 20 points.
All right, I'll put you on the spot for a question, and I'm actually pulling it up right now because I don't know. I do know the top, but who do you think the leading assist getters were in the NBA this year?
Well, assist is no longer
okay, so this is what I'm talking about, though. So that's why. I mean, if we want to talk about point guards, Mike Conley was a point guard. He was a true point guard, and he could score, you're right. But Mike Conley was a true point guard. Who's a true point guard in the NBA? Does that player exist? Like, I don't know who that is, honestly. I'll read. Here's the top 10 assist guys right in the NBA, just to give you a sense. Jokic 1, Cade Cunningham 2. It might be Cade. Notedly that Cade also averages 24 points a game and takes 19 shots, 18.6.
But he doesn't have anybody else on his team, so.
Correct. But he doesn't really have to pass either, Luka Doncic, he's a great scorer. In fact, he led the NBA in scoring this year at 33.5 points a game. James Harden, Jalen Johnson, Steph Castle, LeBron James, Isaiah Collier was 8, which is very funny. Shout out Isaiah. LaMelo Ball and Jamal Murray. Those are your top 10 guys. There's not a point guard, floor general in there. Cade is maybe the most. Isaiah is honestly probably number 2. I do think that maybe that type of player doesn't actually exist in today's NBA. So if we're waiting for Chris Paul of yore, John Stockton, whoever to come back, I'm not waiting for that. I'm not holding my breath for anybody to become that, nor am I judging Keyonte George against that, because I don't think that's what the league does anymore. So can Keyonte fall into that other group of guys I just mentioned? Let's say Jamal Murray, who was at 10, LaMelo Ball, who was at 9. Moving down the board, a couple of picks, Jaylen Brown, who's at 11. Shea was at 14. He's obviously not going to be that good of a scorer, but Shea's one of the best scorers in the NBA and the best scorer on his team. Tyrese Maxey. I don't know if Tyrese definitely led 76ers in scoring this year. He was at 28.3 points. I think Keontae's in that group of people, and that's just what the NBA is. That's what lead guards do today. And I will tell you the truth, that's not my favorite type of player. That's actually not the type of guard I like, but I do think that that's just where the NBA is today. And I think the NBA is asking or designed for what copycat league. I don't actually know what that is. I'd be curious to talk to people smarter than I am, and when it comes to strategy of basketball. But I do think that is what the league features, and Keyonte is of that ilk, so he will be featured in a similar fashion. Now, I gave you a really wide scope of players. That doesn't mean he has to be the worst type of player there, which is LaMelo, and he doesn't have to be the best type of player there, which is Shea or whoever. I just think he's in that spectrum.
Me personally, I do not care about assist numbers, and Keontae's assists this year were 6.1, which is perfectly fine.
Which would have ranked 18th in the NBA, just behind De'Aaron Fox and just ahead of Devin Booker.
I honestly don't even think those numbers need to go up, because an assist, I wish they did assists like hockey does assists. I think that would tell a much better story.
Yes.
Ever since Rusty Westbrook figured out that if he dribbles the ball until there's 3 seconds left on the clock and then passes it to somebody and they have to shoot, that's an automatic point in the box score for him. And I give him credit for being the first one, but you could probably look at James Harden for doing something similar. That ceased to become a stat that represented what I'm talking about, unselfishness.
Ball movement, unselfishness, yeah.
Keontae's usage was 27.9, second highest on the team behind Lowry.
Okay.
That number either needs to go down or stay the same. And I guess what I'm talking about, Ben, is the Jazz need a player to initiate the offense. I think the Jazz will be a team that will stress, this is what I'm guessing Will Hardy wants, and I don't mean to project, but 4 or 5 passes per possession. How do you get it going from side to side to get Lauri Markkanen an open shot, or Jaren Jackson an open shot, or Walker Kessler something in the dunk spot? Can you answer me this? Can Keyonte be relied to beat his own guy one-on-one? Because that could be a huge role for him on this team, because the Jazz don't have a ton of that.
I think that was his superpower this year. That's where he got. Now, while his shooting numbers got better because he learned he can get anywhere on the court he wants.
So, how does he utilize that superpower, as you say? Is it to get himself a selfish shot on a zero pass possession? Or is it to create an open shot, maybe 2 or 3 passes down the line to Lauri Markkanen, who's one of the best shooters in the league, or Jaren Jackson, who's in his, upper 30s from 3 and even better in closer? that is more what I think Will Hardy is looking for. And I'm just going on the play hard and pass or you're not going to play, and how he adjusted Colin Sexton's game, for example, or your guy Jordan Clarkson, the 1 year that Jordan was into the starting lineup, which I think was his best year as a Jazz man. People will say, he won Sixth Man of the Year. Yeah. What are you talking about? I thought that was his best as an overall basketball player. I thought that was his best season. If Keyonte remembers that he's going to have, I mean, think about it, Ben. I mean, just for pipe dream's sake, let's say they add A.J. DeBonta. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden he's your sixth man, or he's your starting two, and Ace Bailey is your sixth man. It can't be the Keyonte show.
I totally agree. I would have worried about it more after his first and second year.
I just think there's so much more talent if you don't utilize it. And I think that's what Brian was saying. If you don't utilize it, you're leaving a lot out on the table. Why did Kristaps Porzingis suck in Dallas? Did he forget how to play basketball?
Right. He was playing a lot of stand around and watch.
That's all he did. Mm-hmm. So I think the Jazz want to be a team that gets the most out of all of their guys in their role. And that doesn't mean that when I say in there, it doesn't mean that everybody scores 20. Mm-hmm. It means who's in what slot and how do you get the most out of them. Who is going to be their highest scorer? In a perfect world, I don't think they want it to be Keyonte. I think they'd love for it to be Ace if they had to really, in a perfect world, choose who their highest scorer is next year. I think they'd love for it to be Ace. I think choice number 2 would be Lowry, and choice number 3 would be Jaren Jackson.
So I think the narrative around small guards in the NBA has swung too far to the negative. And I will constitute Keyonte as a small guard because he's not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's not Tyrese Halliburton. He's not...
How tall is Tyrese? I have no idea.
Like 6'7"? I mean, he's big. He's like a big dude. Yeah, 6'6", 6'7", somewhere in that range. He's a big dude. Keontae's not in that group. Now, he's not the smallest, obviously, but he's not a big guard in that traditional sense. Mm-hmm. So I will say he's in that range still. I don't think a small guard can be your second best player on your team and you can win a title. So the Knicks can't win a title because Jalen Brunson's their best player. Even if they had someone better than him, he's your second best player. He's too small.
Halliburton, by the way, listed at 6'5".
Okay. Big, but bigger than Keyonte. Legitimately bigger than
just
Keyonte.
Make sure we have accurate info.
Totally fair. I don't think the 76ers can win a title because Tyrese Maxey's their second best player and he's not 6'5".
Now, if they let Joel Embiid be their best player, that might be a different story.
Well, even with Tyrese as their second best player.
Yeah. Okay.
You can't be. I don't think you can be one of your top 2 players on your team.
All right.
So that's disqualifying. I'd have to look at who else is in the NBA right now and playing.
I don't think the Lakers are going anywhere.
No, the Lakers aren't going anywhere. Now, these teams that do have these bigger guards have shown that there's a real chance to win a title. That doesn't mean you can't draft a small guard. Yeah, if Shai's there, draft Shai. Great. There's not a six guard who shoots 60% from the floor available.
Are you just prepping everybody for the Jazz getting the 7th pick and only small guards being available?
It's very possible. Keaton Wagler's also Tyrese Halliburton-esque. But no, that's not what I'm saying. So when we look at the Jazz and what is the ideal role for Keyonte, I don't think he's going to be positioned to be the Jazz's second best player. In all honesty, I just don't.
No, I don't think so either.
And I think he's smart enough to know that. I honestly believe that. I think Keyonte has said it a lot. And look, talk is very cheap. Donovan Mitchell talks a lot, doesn't really mean a whole lot that comes out of his mouth.
But to back up your point, his attitude change was palpable last year, I thought.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And because by the way, let's put Cleveland in that conversation. If he's not their best player, which he is, he's their second best player, the Cavs can't win a title with Donovan Mitchell as their second best player. If he dropped to third, you'd be really talking about something.
Like Drew Holiday with the Celtics.
Yeah, Derek White. That guy is their third best player, and maybe even fourth when you have Kristaps. So Keyonte needs to be the Jazz's third or fourth best player. Now, not by default. He actually needs guys to be better than he is, which means Lowry needs to continue to be better than he is. Jaren is better than he is. And then best case scenario is either Ace or whoever they draft or Walker becomes a better player than Keyonte George. And if that's the case, I think Keontae's more than good enough to play that role. And I think he's, to get to the heart of this conversation, smart enough to understand to get other people involved. I really understand. You watch the first 2 years, you see a kind of a ball hog and a guy who had big numbers and they were really inflated and didn't mean anything. And I don't blame anyone who didn't watch the Jazz last year, but I don't think that's what Keyonte was this past season. So I think there's a different player. Now, really where he needs to get way better is defensively. He just you can't be a total dog on that end. And the Jazz right now have too many guys who are really bad defensive players. Having Walker behind you, having Jaren behind you, Ace is going to get better. Maybe you get another good defensive player in the draft. That will certainly help. But while I don't disagree with what Brian Getzeiler is saying there, that if Keyonte plays selfish, he's the wrong guy, I'm just not that worried about Keyonte playing that way.
Real quick, this is a side note. You just mentioned everybody's concerns about the defense. They traded for Jaren Jackson Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Walker Kessler's coming back into the lineup.
Yeah.
Just ignore the defensive stats from this year. They were trying to be bad defensively.
Correct.
They were attempting to.
For 4 straight years, the Jazz have had an interest in being the worst defensive team in the NBA because it allows you to lose games.
So people out there waving that out as some sort of deep criticism and concern about the Jazz going forward, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And look at who's on the team. Mm-hmm. Automatically with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Walker Kessler simply being additions to your lineup, and the fact that you will be trying as opposed to trying to suck. What, middle of the league? Easy?
Yeah, I think you jump up into that low 20s, meaning like 21, 22.
I actually think they'll be top 10 next year, but I would...
16, 17?
I would say 16, 17 is an automatic simply from a personnel standpoint.
And by trying.
And by trying.
That by trying, you really get a lot.
Who was the Jazz center the last 2 weeks of the year? Bez?
Well, Anderson Garcia started the game for
and
played all 48
well.
minutes. Yeah. Yeah,
and so
Bez
they had
and Bang
to cut
might
him.
have played center. Cody Williams, I think, played some center.
Oh,
down
Cody
the
played a
stretch.
lot of center.
Yeah.
They did not play anybody over 6'10".
Yeah. I mean, Flip plays like he's 6'4".
There were nights Phil didn't play.
There are a lot, yeah. So
there were plenty of nights Phil didn't play for rest.
The only issue I would have is we haven't seen any real applicable data that tells me anything about what we should fairly expect from the Jazz. I do think PK's question is very legitimate. Inflated stats on bad teams, do they mean anything? Some do, some don't. I think the best example, and there was a real control of it, and maybe it doesn't turn out to be the case, but I don't think Colin Sexton's numbers in Cleveland bared out to be anything valuable.
I agree.
And I think Lowry's did. And they both came from Cleveland on bad teams.
Lowry wasn't even that great in Cleveland.
No, he wasn't. He actually was kind of a third banana. In fact, he scored fewer points than Colin did on that team. So
I don't think Lowry was used right until he got to the Jazz, and I'm not just trying to.
But you know what? That again, to
Jazz.
go back to a control model, I don't think Colin knows how to let Lowry be the guy, and I think Keyonte did.
Well, we'll see. I think that comes to the heart of what Getzeiler was talking about.
Yeah.
Can you make those guys better? I think that will be his. I think that'll be his role. And since he had a front row seat for the Colin Sexton hot dog debacle, I would guess that he learned that lesson.
But to go back to a point I've made on the show a lot, and looking at all those numbers we were just talking about on scoring leaders in the NBA and usage leaders in the NBA, which I didn't go down the top 20, but I'd probably say 12 of them are guards. The NBA is designed for guys specifically like Keyonte George to average 28 points a game. It's because I think it's because of laziness of the NBA.
I agree with that.
Because who's the easiest guy to have score? The guy who has the ball in his hands. And if you can just drive to the rim and foul bait, well, that's easy.
Yeah.
That's better than making a couple of passes. That's better than hoping your guy can really process the game at a super high level and make the pass that leads to the pass. And he's going to be unselfish enough in a contract year to not try and go out and get 28 points a game and 8 assists and say, look, I'm a max player. You got to pay me $230 million. That's a concern for Keyonte as well. Maybe you try and lock him up now so he doesn't feel like he's in a contract year where he has to prove it.
I just wanted to see who the usage leaders were this year. I might not be able to find it.
Here, I got it pulled up right here.
Oh, some of these people barely played.
I've got it for qualifiers.
Okay.
Luka won at 38%. Jaylen Brown.
38 is such a big number.
It's absurd, yeah. Jaylen Brown at 36%.
Gone fishing.
Had a great season this year.
Loved it.
Loved his year.
Yeah.
Kawhi, 33%. Shea, 33%. Victor Wembanyama at 32%. Devin Booker at 32%. Donovan at 32%. LaMelo at 32%. Ant at 31%. Cade Cunningham at 30%.
I'm surprised, honestly, that Shea's is as high as it is at 33, just because he's such an efficient scorer.
Yeah. But it has to do with getting to the free throw line as much as he does as well. He's so good at foul baiting that he earns a lot of trips. By the way, to round out, and where I think we get a little bit more guard heavy, though not exclusively, 11 through 20 is Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, Jalen Brunson, Pascal Siakam, Tyrese Maxey, Denny Avdia, James Harden, Dylan Brooks, Brandon Miller, and then Keyonte was at number 20 already.
Michael Porter Jr. is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
A guy who has that usage on just an awful team.
Yeah. Certainly more concerned about.
That's the Bradley Beal of this year's stats.
Certainly be more worried about Michael Porter Jr. having that number than, Lowry. That's the guy who you're more worried about having inflated stats on a team that isn't going to be the leading scorer on a good team.
Stay tuned. Top 3 stories of the day at KSLSports.com. Coming up next, Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Yeah, somebody might have gotten fired, and so I decided I couldn't go back to that.
Yikes.
I couldn't go
Just
back
in
to
case.
that place. Yeah.
Okay.
It's time. It's the Jacob Ed Show. Time for the top 3 stories of the day at KSLSports.com, which is brought to you, of course, by J. Brooks Jewelers. Cherish your love. With J. Brooks Jewelers, explore their expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials. Doing top 3 stories an hour late today because pretty much all of the 2 o'clock hour was dominated by the postseason press conference for the Utah Mammoth. We heard from Andre Tierney, Bill Armstrong, and Chris Armstrong. You can catch all that up at KSLSports.com if you missed it. But, Christian, where do you want to start today?
Number 1. I think the Timberwolves were listening in yesterday. Take that, Ben. They take game 1.
One absolute dog of a game, and that was the first game. But the second game was amazing. That was a great game. That's exactly what you're looking for from the playoffs. And shout out to the more experienced Timberwolves who did prove in game 1 how much that mattered.
I feel like they did it right to you, Ben. I agree with Christian. Somebody was listening, and they're like, guess what? This bozo in Salt Lake City basically said that we don't have a chance. Let's go show them wrong.
It was
And, of course, the Spurs had a look at the end, and we could have entirely changed the conversation. But the defensive game plan on Wemby was awesome. And it was, shout out to you. We're teasing you about your terrible prediction. But you brought up, will they guard him with Randall? Will they guard him with Rudy? How is the game plan going to be? And, man, I like Chris Finch. It ended up being kind of a hybrid.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of everything.
It was a lot of everything. If Randall wasn't punching him in the ribs, then Rudy was using his length. I mean, it really was a fantastic game plan for the Timberwolves. And I know that the Ant-Man gets most of the credit because he showed up and played, and what a gutty performance. But it was a team win. And, Ben, tell me if I'm projecting too much here or if I'm reading too much into it. But the Timberwolves came and played against the Jazz a night where they did not have Anthony Edwards. And this was Rudy. Remember, he had made comments that maybe now somebody will pass, or he was excited Slow-Mo was back on the team because Slow-Mo likes to pass. And you and I were clowning him for being the same old Rudolph, crying about not getting the basketball. But then they smoked the Jazz without Ant and had something like 40 assists. I'd have to go back and look. But it was obvious that, at least obvious to me, that the internal struggle in Minnesota was how to play as a team. And maybe they weren't feeling like Ant was much of a team guy, at least at that time. And if you look at Ant's attitude in the first round, he was all about the team. And he was all about the team picking up when he got hurt. And I think he's probably pretty grateful to make it to the second round and to gut it out and go in and contribute, even though he played, 25
Came off the bench.
Came off the
Amazing.
bench, paid 25 minutes. I think he's really bought into this team thing. And I think that makes the Timberwolves really dangerous.
As I've said, maybe not the best. Jokic is pretty good. Shea's obviously very good. Ant might be the best leader in the NBA. He's like in the conversation because he will adjust and adapt. And not only is he a vocal leader, he's a leader by example, which we argued yesterday. He does a little bit of everything. Yeah. And when he recognizes it doesn't have to be the Ant show, they can really succeed without him. And he comes off the bench and is good, and the team wins as a result. And then, yeah, if somebody else needs their shine, Julius Randle in the fourth quarter I thought was amazing. And Ant's willingness to not make it about Ant absolutely empowers Chris Finch to make the right decision.
I totally agree. I think that's a great point.
Last night, Rudy Gobert plays 1 minute in the fourth quarter. Captain Jack never was willing to make those adjustments.
No, he wasn't.
He didn't feel empowered enough to make the decisions that are best for his team.
Why is the rum always gone?
But Ant is willing to be selfless, which means Chris Finch can make a good decision and play Julius Randle for the entire 12 minutes of the period and Naz Reid for 10 minutes and 50 seconds of the period. And Rudy played 1 minute and 10 seconds. Now, Rudy was on the floor for the last minute, guarding Wemby, grabbing some rebounds, taking a bunch of fouls to go to the free throw line, and Rudy knocked down one of them, one of the two that he took. But what can Rudy complain about? They won the game.
Nothing.
That's the value of a great leader, and that's where Ant, as strange of a person as he actually is seemingly in real life, is a really good basketball leader.
Do you remember the one time Captain Jack did not finish the game with Rudolph?
Uh-huh.
And Derek Favors finished it. And do you remember the narrative after the game?
Wow.
No, it was, well, Rudolph said it was
Absolutely.
okay.
Well,
Rudolph went to Quinn
That's
and
what
said
Rudy
it was
said.
okay.
Yeah.
And
It was like, I think Quinn, Captain Jack, after the game said, I asked Rudy for permission to close the game with Derek Favors, or Rudy told Quinn it was okay to close the game with Derek instead of Rudy.
there's a reason Captain Jack put it that way after the game, because it wasn't okay with Rudy. And Captain Jack did listen to that sort of stuff and never benched Rudy ever again.
Right. I don't care who the highest paid player is on the team. Your job is to win games.
Yeah,
and
I
I
totally
understand
agree.
that's the dynamic of the politics of your team, and the best player needs to buy into that as well. And I think Ant does, and I think as a result they are better. I do not understand at all what Victor Wembanyama was doing in this game. He took
17 shots.
17 shots. How many of them were threes?
8.
8
0 for
threes.
8.
0 for 8. Dog, you're 7'5".
I don't think he likes physical play. This is the. Remember when Victor was first drafted by the Spurs and they tried to play him at 4 and it just didn't work? Because honestly, you got to play that guy at 5.
Yeah.
I mean, you negate the advantage basically by playing him at 4.
Agreed.
But I don't think he does like getting punched in the ribs by Julius Randle all game.
And
I don't think
finished-
that's his thing. He'd rather take the 3.
He is so amazing that even on what may have been the worst game I've seen him play, he still had an 11-point, 15-rebound, NBA playoff record, 12 block shots.
Kind of.
Triple-double. Insane. What I absolutely loved if I'm a Timberwolves fan, every 3 minutes, Victor Wembanyama was scraping himself off the floor. He fell down so many times in that game, and I hope he has to do it 50 more times if I'm a Timberwolves fan. Sorry, dude. Sorry, man. I get that you're the most physically dominant player in the NBA right now. Hope you like falling down a lot, because you're going to have to pick yourself up over and over and over, because we are going to chop you down because we're trying to win a championship here.
Well, let's save that. We'll say we're up against it a little bit, Christian. We'll save. Chris Finch was talking about, I was saying kind of with the blocks, because there was some goaltending in there that got they're going to count it as a block shot. And Chris Finch kind of called it out. But I know it's early for Hot Take Tuesday because we're going to do that at 4:30. But the Spurs should just cut De'Aaron Fox. He's the worst player. How is he starting? And you know what? I doubted Dylan Harper earlier in the season. He's a better player right now today than De'Aaron Fox.
He had 18, 4, and 4 off the bench in 28 minutes. And yeah, he's big. Like, he's really big. He is probably one of these big guards, 6'6", 6'5", that we're talking about in the last segment. The value of having guys who are that height. He is, and De'Aaron's little.
De'Aaron Fox is terrible.
Yeah, did not have a good game.
How many turnovers do you have last night, Ben?
6.
How many assists do you have last night?
He had 6. Yep. And Dylan Harper, 0 turnovers.
But the good news about Fox is, though, Ben, is that he makes a lot of money.
Correct.
So there's that.
Yeah.
Next.
Number 2, BYU and Utah State basketball announced a 2-game series. Here's the catcher. Cougs aren't going to Logan. Are they scared?
Well, obviously.
Yeah, why would you? I wouldn't want to go play up there.
I do hate the leverage game when it's come to scheduling in-state. And both Utah and BYU have been guilty of it. I'm sure Utah State's guilty of it too. With Weber State. I mean, are they going to Ogden ever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've seen it in football. We've seen it in basketball, where they say, okay, well, I don't have to go play you. We even saw Utah try to do it to BYU. I mean, we're a bigger deal than you, so we don't need to adhere to norms or what the fans or the community or anything like that wants. So if BYU goes up to Logan and wins, it doesn't do anything for them because they've got plenty of quad one wins in their conference. And if they go up to Logan and lose, it's really harmful. So instead of just saying, hey, there's more important things than our RPI or something stupid and just playing the game, they're not going to. Now, I'm happy that they're scheduling it. That's great.
Yeah.
I want to see these two teams play. And if they have to do a home and neutral because BYU's ego's out there, then I guess I'd rather see that than them not play. And they're giving Utah State half the gate at Delta Center, which will be a nice payday for them and is probably the reason that they're doing it.
I'm happy they're playing. I don't blame BYU for flexing their muscle against Utah State. I credit Utah State for being willing to accept it.
Why don't you blame BYU for flexing their muscle?
That's what teams do. It's just the
that
power.
Doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, I'm okay, but I'm not going to hold BYU to a standard that I'm not holding anyone else to.
I'm holding Utah, BYU, Utah State, all the teams to the same standard. They should play each other. Same thing in non-conference in football. If you're going to play a 1AA team, play Weber State, play SUU, play somebody in state.
At least BYU is playing Utah State, and that's where I do give them credit. At least they are playing Utah State, who is a good basketball program and can absolutely beat BYU both in Provo and certainly at Delta Center. So I'm glad BYU is at least playing them. Would I love it if it was a home and home? Absolutely. Would I prefer if it was neutral? Yes. Will I accept Provo and Delta Center? Sure.
Should be home neutral. That should be.
I'd love that.
That's what it was back in the aughts.
Yeah. But obviously they don't do the all-local tournament anymore because BYU and Utah can't play a non-conference game.
Well, that thing didn't even really count as a tournament anyway. But especially in basketball, I just don't think there's any excuse not to do it. In football, if you want to tell me that there's only 12 games and you only have 3 non-conference games and it's really difficult to play Utah State, okay, I'll listen to that. In basketball, there's no excuse. It's early in the season. The penalty isn't that bad. I don't like it.
I do like that BYU, though, has, and we'll be curious how much this looks like. This is a theme going forward, but, you know, when you have A.J. DeBonta and you can go play in all these invitational tournaments and you get to play Clemson early in the year, or they brought North Carolina here to play in Delta Center in an exhibition, I do like that BYU has the power and some of the name value to do that.
What's next?
I hope that continues.
Number 3, in case you missed it, the Mammoth wrapped their season today. Andre Tourney, Chris Armstrong, Bill Armstrong spoke to the media.
Listening to Coach Bear talk, I have to remember that there is a very thin line between reasons and excuses, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, not that anyone asked me, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that the reasons he was explaining were acceptable. He talked about how good Vegas was at closing out series, or how good they are in the third period. He talked about how the stats from last year showed that in the Stanley Cup playoffs, the team with the lead in the third period gave it up 40% of the time. He also talked about how good they were, something like 29-2 in the regular season when they held a lead in the third period. The truth is it can't be all of those things. You know, that felt excusey to me. And no one really cares about the excuses. I don't need to hear the excuses. It reminded me a little bit of Captain Jack being like, it's okay if we blow double-digit leads in the fourth quarter because Boston also does it. It's like, it's not okay to do it. But it doesn't matter if Boston does it. They shouldn't do it either, and neither can you. So I guess that's what I will be keeping an eye on for the Mammoth.
We talked about how end-of-season interviews or locker room cleanout or whatever is filled with a lot of bumdemism. Bummed, yet optimism.
Yeah.
Bumdemism. Way more optimism in today's press conference than there was bummed. And is that a good thing?
I didn't get the impression that they were discussing sweeping changes, which could include Coach Bear, which, you know, I had said on our show earlier. I had heard midseason that there was very real momentum, that he was almost gone, and they make the playoffs. And I didn't get the sense listening to all of those people talk, Chris Armstrong, Bill Armstrong, and Bear himself, that was going to be something that was discussed this offseason.
All right, stay tuned. We've got Eric Pincus, one of our very favorites. He covers the NBA for Bleacher Report at the top of the 4 o'clock hour. Hot Take Tuesday at 4:30. Audio Vault at 4:50. Stay tuned. It's Jake and Ben Show, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
All systems go. This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson. Now, every day from 2 to 6 on 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. I'm excited for Audio Vault today.
Okay.
Because I've seen online that there has been some back and forth between Austin Rivers and Draymond Green. But I don't know the specifics.
Okay.
So I'm going into the audio vault cold, and I'm pretty excited about it. Austin Rivers has kind of become which is crazy because I never liked that Austin got a contract from his dad to stay in the NBA. But he's become one of my favorite truth tellers as an ex-NBA player. Remember, he was the one who said LeBron has no wiggle.
Yeah. There is some value to being a Nepo baby in the sense that he's been around this business his whole life. He doesn't have the I've got to get into the in crowd. He was born on the inside. He doesn't have to say, well, I hope I can hang out here or I hope I can establish myself. He's never known anything different, so he can legitimately kind of speak, I think, freely, where some guys might not be comfortable doing that.
I got to admit, I'm looking forward to hearing that. Plus, anybody criticizing Draymond Green is just great. Do you ever listen to Draymond's podcast? I never do.
I only catch it in clips. No.
Do you think that they're going to hire him to be on Inside the NBA?
I think he's probably going to get at least a year or two trying it. Again, I told you, I think maybe Blake Griffin should get that gig. I think I'd much rather listen to him than Shaq. But, they'll go with Draymond because Draymond gets a lot of attention.
What's Blake doing now? I get them all right. NBC and Amazon all have.
He does Amazon. Blake does Amazon with Udonis Haslem and Dirk.
And Dirk is surprisingly really good.
Dirk is really good and knows what he's talking about. He's not the most charismatic.
Blake has personality coming out of his ears.
So much personality.
Yeah, that's always been true about him.
Yeah.
Remember when he teamed up to do a bunch of stuff with Funny or Die? He was hilarious.
Yeah, Dirk's funny. Dirk is
no, it was Blake who did that.
Dirk is legitimately funny also. He has a real sense of humor about himself. Yes, Blake is just he was on what was the TV? Not Girls. What was the other TV show about the Brooklyn girls, these two girls who lived together?
I know what you're talking about, where they're both hot messes. Yeah,
on Comedy
Broad Street.
Broad City?
Broad City. There
Broad City. And he was
not Broads. Broad City.
It was fine. Yes, he was on Broad. He was great. He has that. He really has that gene. So I'd love to see him on ESPN or TNT. Somebody would be really lucky to get him. The problem is for a lot of these guys, as good as they are, they don't want to be stuck to something and have all these obligations. And Amazon only has a couple of nights a week that he's obligated to. I do think Draymond can't wait to be everywhere all the time. So Draymond will get hired somewhere because Draymond clearly loves being in front of the camera and being front and center in the conversation. So I do think that's why Draymond will get an opportunity because he'll just keep saying yes.
Wouldn't we all just prefer him going away, though?
If Draymond didn't have a post-playing career, it wouldn't bother me at all. I'd be, okay.
I'm not the world's biggest Shaq fan, but I wasn't eager for him to go away. Charles was a villain, and nobody wants to see Charles go away. I think most everybody would like to see Draymond go away.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I'd really like to see Kendrick Perkins go away.
Agreed. I would take Draymond over Kendrick Perkins.
Oh, I don't think I can say that. How about neither?
I at least think Draymond has a sense of what he's talking about. I don't think Perk knows what he's talking about.
I would buy into that.
So that would be my criticism. I truly don't think Kendrick Perkins knows what he's saying.
Is that true, or is he the type of guy who will just say anything?
He'll just say anything.
Just talk out of his backside if it gets him attention on TV or elsewhere.
Yeah, so what's the difference? The end result is the same. Either he's dumb and doesn't know, or he is happy to perpetrate whatever to keep himself on TV.
I don't know what is worse.
The disingenuousness of being purposely stupid, or ESPN being disingenuous by having somebody on who doesn't know what they're talking about?
I think it'd be worse to be dumb.
Okay.
Like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless are going to be together again. When is that? It's like tomorrow or something?
Yeah.
Those guys are disingenuous.
Correct.
But can be entertaining.
Yes.
Dim, I think, is far worse.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. You can't fix dim.
You can't fix dim.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Even Stephen A. and Skipper can wrap it up into an entertaining conversation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But if Perk is dumb, then yes, that's worse.
Yeah, and I think that might be the case.
Somebody who's the opposite of that, Eric Pincus, is going to be on the show coming up next. Stay tuned. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.